Shall I go live now? Okay, I'm going to go live now. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize very much for the technical issues that we have, but however, it seems that we are now in order. So you will be unable to look at my slides. However, the slides will be made available to you, for you, after the show. Now, what we're going to talk about is how you, as companies, can develop the AI, the artificial intelligence governance codes. As you are all aware, there has been a lot of hype around AI, artificial intelligence, and the reason for the big hype is only because so much of it is available on the net, on the different websites by Microsoft and many other companies, and it's available for free. So, therefore, AI that has been used by companies for technical purposes several years ago is now made available to everybody as a general audience. However, with this huge exposure that one and all has on AI, it now then requires some discipline. And this discipline can be available by establishing some rules. And these rules are the AI, artificial intelligence governance code, that we are going to talk about. The codes, the suggested codes, is already been made by us as a generic code. It's not a customized code, so you just cannot copy paste the code that you will get. You will get a link to those codes on the presentation that you will get later. However, what we will do right now is go through the various steps so that you as a company, you as manager, or you as a director of a company are able to guide, to provide instructions to your staff, to your technical staff, to all your stakeholders, so that the implementation of AI or the artificial intelligence in your company does not go astray. And as you are aware, that the technical component needs a lot of discipline, and with the codes, you will be able to implement that discipline. So, being that the AI governance, artificial intelligence governance, is top of the complicated of the corporate agenda, it does have some implications. And these implications are with regards to the ethics and the integrity component that good governance is all about. Depending on the size of the organization, you then have to implement the AI governance depending on how you are normally conducting your business in the organization. Some organizations have committees. And if you are working with board committees, you would probably need to implement or have an AI committee. And an AI committee would need a codex. It would also need a charter so that the committee has some rules on how they will monitor the legal, the privacy component, the security component, the compliance component, and of course also the marketing components, because as you all know, suddenly AI is on everybody's lips, and that is due to the marketing that has been done around the implementation of AI. In this process, you have to remember that AI is not a standalone process. The governance codex has to be integrated into the management systems. The AI codes have to be embedded as a cross functional system, and the AI has to have a function. And the function could be on risk, the function could be on cybersecurity, the function could be on automation. It all depends on the level of maturity that your organization is having. Now, there are also multiple components in the AI. For example, one of the widely used AI component is the generative AI. There are many others, but let's not talk about them all at once. Let's just focus on the generative AI, because the generative AI has some privacy and ethical issues that the AI code that you are going to develop now, or we are going to develop together, has to consist of. So the things that you must focus on is, what are the consequences if something in your artificial intelligence system or implementation goes wrong. And believe me, as you're all aware, when we implement compliance activities, something invariably will go wrong at some stage. And therefore, you need at this stage to identify what are the possible areas where things can go wrong and what are the consequences. The next thing you need to focus on, and believe, as I said earlier, we are only going to focus on generative AI. Perhaps in a future event, we can talk about some other components of AI, but let's focus now on the generative. So, when something goes wrong, what are the repercussions? What are the results? What is the damage? What are the risks involved? So, as you are aware, we all depend on AI to provide us with certain answers. But what happens if there are inaccurate answers? How do we address them? And how do we make sure that we know what is the right answer and what is the wrong answer? The third thing you need to focus on is on the bias. As you know, we all have multiple bias. But you as managers, you as directors, you as stakeholders need to focus on how are you relatively going to handle those bias when it comes to AI. Because we need to be very, very generic, but in reality, the generic component is not always in order. Therefore, we need to address the bias. But in order to address the bias, we need to know what these biases are. There can also be some predispositions, and these predispositions can be related to the technical component. It could be related to the organizational component. It could also be related to the operational components. So focus on these three areas. What are the predispositions and how are you going to address them? When we talk about generative AI and the technicality, we need to know who is going to use the data. And if we are talking about privacy and ethical concerns, we also need to complement these concerns with regards to the consent component. As you're all aware, in privacy, in data protection, the consent component is very important, because if you do not have the consent, you cannot use the data. So, therefore, in order to use the data that is generated by AI, you need to make sure that you have the proper authorizations. And when it comes to privacy, the authorization is the consent. Now, the consent cannot be on all types of data. The consent is based on different types of data, and there again, you need to ensure that the use of the data related to the consent is for the right type of that data. The next point you need to focus on is the AI tools. What are the AI tools, and how do these different tools use the different type of data that you are going to either generate or you're going to input? Therefore, you need to make sure that the technical component of that particular AI tool is relevant for the way that you're going to use, perhaps even going to misuse, or definitely how you're going to manage, store, and ultimately delete that particular data. When we are talking about deletion, you also need to make sure that you have the access, the right access to the data that you are going to use in the AI, the artificial intelligence processing. We talked about the various categories of data earlier, but at this stage, you would then make sure that you really categorize the different types of data so that you are aware what is sensitive data and what are the data that could put the AI systems into some type of a risk. So, categorizing categories of the different types of data that you're going to use to generate the AI is also very important. We talked about the responsible use of data, and there we discussed consent earlier. But there are other legal bases of processing the data. It could be legitimate interest, it could be contract, it could be any other way, a legal component, the legal use of the data, the legal requirement to use of the data. In that case, you need to make sure that the legal basis of using the data that goes beyond consent, for example, legitimate interest, for example, contract, is also applicable to the AI system that you are going to use. So, categorize the data and make sure that they are compatible to the AI system that you have in mind. Therefore, you must understand that the AI tools that you use rely on the data both as input and as output, and therefore you need to focus on it in a manner that is compliant. Some organizations also have a huge amount of data, and that you would normally use in AI for profiling, to make use of the big data that you have. And as you know, if you have control of the data, you can decide probably the profits that the organization is going to do. We also know that the right use or the wrong use of the data can even elect presidents in multiple countries, and we have seen in the past how this data can be used. So therefore, the right use of the data is extremely essential in order to make sure that you are going to use the data in the right way, so that organizations understand the tools and organization understands the data. When we are talking about huge quantities of data, data lakes, big data, and so on, lots of companies are using anonymized data. And this anonymized data is kept out of the compliance scope of, for example, GDPR, but you must be able to identify and re-identify the data, the anonymized data, so that you can ultimately use it for the right purpose that AI is going to help you with this particular type of data. Therefore, when you are using anonymized data or pseudo-anonymized data, you must be able to identify and de-identify the data so that you can make use of the data. And once again, to repeat myself, if you have the right use of the data, if you have the structured data, you can decide your profits. If you can decide who is going to be the president or the parliament or the prime minister in an election vote because you have so good information on the data, then you can also use it to generate the profits that you want in the organization. Therefore, AI is going to generate a huge amount of synthetic data. And in order to be able to use this synthetic data, you need training. You need to train your employees, your stakeholders, your technical staff, so that they can use the computer generated or AI generated synthetic data, synthetic big data, so that it does not put any other compliance activity, for example, data privacy, for example, data protection, for example, GDPR, at risk. So you need to go step by step, and this is a structured methodology on how you have to go so that ultimately you would be able to ensure, or ultimately you will be able to make your own AI code. It's not an easy task. You need to go through the various steps. It's just like data mapping. It's very cumbersome, but there are no shortcuts. You cannot just take a AI codex, and we are going to give you an AI codex in the presentation. There is a link, and there are 10 steps. It's all ready made, but we do not encourage you to take that result and copy paste it as your own AI codex. It is not advisable, but it is just a help to you to proceed in the right manner. We have been talking about privacy, integrity, ethics, GDPR, but at this stage, when you have come so far, you need to establish a framework that you will use in order to be able to proceed, in order to integrate your AI, your artificial intelligence, into a system. We would like to think that in this structured way, you would integrate the AI system so that it is compliant by design. It is easy said, but it is a cumbersome effort. And therefore, if you continue in the structured manner, you will be able to initiate the development of the AI systems, initiated the AI processes, so that you are able to construct a AI framework. We will now continue to proceed because there is also AI compliance. The EU has very recently come up with a AI compliant act, and you need to focus on it. I'm not sure how many people are from the EU because I have not got any participant list. However, whether or not you are in the EU or not, it doesn't matter. The EU Act on AI is quite generic, and probably it will be used by multiple other countries in the world, just as they have used the AI, excuse me, just as they have been able to use the EU GDPR as a global golden standard, and now copy pasted in many other compliance activities around the world. So, therefore, there is a AI Act, and this concerns about data and the concerns on the data that we have talked about. However, if you go step by step, and now at this stage we are not only talking about the framework, but we are also talking about the AI Act that is in the EU. So when we have come so far, you will be able to kind of be able to champion the AI Codex implementation in the organization. And what are the steps that you need to do? What are the pitfalls that you need to be aware of so that you can use AI as intelligence, the results of what AI is able to give the organization. We talked about the data, but it can also be many other things that AI will be able to provide, all depending on the maturity of the organization that you are in. But at this stage, let's focus on the risk management component. As you are aware, with the huge amount of data, there is also a huge amount of risk, and you need to identify those risks. And earlier we talked about categorizing the data. At this stage, we will also ask you to categorize the risks that are involved. Categorize the risk not only as critical risk or hard risk or green or red, yellow signals that you can use to identify the type of risk, but focus on the risk, because you need to comply with the AI models, with all of the bias that we talk about, the fairness we talked about, the transparency that is also required in the EU acts, the accountability that is also needed in the EU acts and other compliance activities with regards to AI. So include these components on accountability, sustainability, transparency, fairness in the framework that you have. And at this stage, the framework focuses primarily on the risk. You have also had some experiences with some business cases, so with some use cases. Use these business cases or use cases to identify the risk so that you can use the risk to implement or develop the governance codex. But at this stage, in developing your AI codex or developing your framework, make sure that you use these for decision making processes in the future, so that the results, what you get from the framework, results, what you get from the AI, is and can be used in your decision making process in the future. And then the next thing you need to do in order to gather the intelligence in systems with regards to risk management from your AI is to extend it to data privacy, extend it to security, to cybersecurity, and any other governance programs that you are going to implement in the organization in the coming months. So, in our structured approach, at this stage, you would then need to go to the plan adoption. Plan adoption on not only generative AI, but also proactive AI. Now we are increasing the bar a little bit. We are increasing the bar so that we can move from the generative AI to the proactive AI, because the proactive AI governance will be responsible, will be accountable for the use of the data that AI, generative AI, is going to produce. And believe me, that data is huge, really huge. So therefore, the structured approach will help you use the data across the organization for whatever purpose that you want to use it for. So technology can have a lot of integration issues, but make sure that this plan AI adoption, this proactive AI governance can be used in the AI, and depending on the technology that it can be used, you can have different type of integrations. You can have the AI or the ML integration. You can also have the MLO ops integration and so on. But these are technical terms that you need to be aware of and that you can discuss with your vendor so that you can ensure the compatibility. The next step would then be the transition. We talked about the generative AI, we talked about the proactive AI, but now we come to the predictive AI, because part of the AI is also to ensure that they are able to predict, not predict by using astrology or something, but predict using the data, so that the predictive to generative AI will be a huge leap. And this leap will provide your organization with different types of scenarios. What happens if this goes wrong? What happens if that goes wrong? So we are now entering into a phase where the AI intelligence that we talked about earlier is going to give you a huge amount of headache, because we have now gone from generative AI to proactive AI, from generative AI to predictive AI. And all of these issues, all of these results can be used for different purposes, but believe me, it can also create multiple issues when something goes wrong. And this is what the AI Codex, if you have developed it the right way, is going to help you. The predictive AI is a standard solution because you have been using the generative AI to customize, to plan the creation, to treat, to simulate, to perform all of these in the multiple different conditions, as we talked about in the different types of scenarios earlier, so that you are aware of all of the risks that are involved. So at this stage, you would then take the analysis that you get from the different types of AI that we talked about, generative to proactive to predictive, so that you have a platform whereby you can analyze that particular data and create into something that you want to use it for. Generative AI will provide you, or the generative to proactive to predictive will provide you with an accurate AI system that you can use for all of the relevant solutions that you're now going to address in the organization. And at this stage, don't forget training and awareness. If you have come so far in developing your AI and your AI codex, you would need the entire organization to be trained and to be aware on how they're going to use this data, how they are going to use this data so that they can focus on the creation, they can focus on the development of new tools, new products, new services, or treat the processes or simulate some scenarios that we again talked about earlier. All of this to address the different types of risk that you have. So, when we are talking about training and awareness, don't forget the human factor. And when you have addressed the human factor, don't forget the cultural factor, because now the organization is going to tread into deep waters, and that may surprise, that may make some people be afraid, but be afraid of their jobs because AI is going to take over. And therefore, you need to address the cultural issues also involved in that, because every time, I remember when Google was introduced, they all thought that everybody is going to lose their job because Google is going to revolutionize so much in the business world and in the corporate world and even in the regular world, the normal world. But it has not. On the contrary, it has given us a tool whereby we can address, we can find answers to multiple areas. And the same thing is going to happen with AI. You need to use the cultural component or the cultural factor in order to make sure that the employees are not scared, and but they are going to use the AI in a transparent way, in a accountable way. Transparent and accountable way that would facilitate continuous improvement when it comes to technology, or improvement when it comes to the processes that you're going to use. So use it the right way so that you can strengthen the multiple organizational processes, the organizational components, the organizational areas that will help you streamline or perhaps even automate. So, to conclude our presentation, to conclude our structure on how you're going to develop the AI Codex, remember that you can also have an AI doctrine in your organization. And what are the components of the AI doctrine that you have in your organization? It could be the methodology, the structure. What we went through is one methodology. Of course, you can tweak it, you can change it, you can adapt it, you can customize it so that it fits that particular organization that you have. Address in your doctrine what are the key issues. We went through multiple key issues. We went through multiple critical processes earlier. We talked about data privacy, we talked about ethics, we talked about integrity, we talked about processes with automation and so on. What are those processes that you're going to use AI for? And assess these processes. Do a gap analysis with regards to these processes and the technological use of AI. What are the dynamic processes? What are the iterative processes? And at this stage, do not forget change management. Use of AI is going to change multiple processes in the organization. Therefore, you need to have a clearly defined AI change management in the organization. Otherwise, you will end up in a chaos because, with regards to the implementation of AI, some people will wait for the new processes generated by AI. Others will say these are not relevant for us, so we do it the old way. And some in the organization will not do anything at all because they think that AI is going to automate the processes. So, in order to avoid this chaos, a change management procedure is relevant. Focus on the uncertainty. There will be uncertainties in the organization and address them before these small uncertainties become something huge. So be systematic, be structured, and be timely. You need to address the issues on a timely basis so that you do not make any shortcuts and avoid addressing the critical issues because it's too time consuming or it needs a change in your IT systems or your IT platforms. There are no shortcuts. These shortcuts are going to haunt you later on. Make the best available use of the data. And finally, last but not the least,